Up to 40% of Americans are facing eviction today. But is a second stimulus package in the works to get relief to them or not? Good afternoon, everyone. This is LALATE, and thank you for joining us for Afternoons on LALATE. This one's about rent assistance and eviction moratoriums with really shocking news from both sides of the political spectrum and new economic data about how serious the situation is today. Overnight, en route to Texas, Donald Trump said that he wants an emergency rent moratorium bill passed in the second stimulus package to protect Americans from being displaced from their homes. He went on to say that his party is doing more for rent eviction protection than the Democrats. But is that really correct? Absolutely not. On Monday, the Republicans introduced the HEALS Act, which was their proposal for a second stimulus package. And nowhere in it is an eviction moratorium bill. It caused many to wonder if the president actually saw what was written or didn't care. Only 24 hours earlier, Steve Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, and Larry Kudlow, his chief economist, both appeared on Sunday Morning News and said that there will be an eviction moratorium provision in the Republican second stimulus package and that it had been fully completed. So where was it? Did it ever exist? Or were Americans lied to once again? Well, the great news was that at least yesterday, the president said that eviction moratoriums need to be put in place. So as the leader of the Republican Party, he made it very clear that the Republicans' position is to offer that right now. What's also really great news is that minutes ago, another leading Republican said the same thing. The thing that's confusing, though, is why is it not on paper? So let me get right to the details. If you don't know, Congress is currently on the floor negotiating bills. And bills are written. They aren't in the air and talked about. They're actually on paper. But the Republicans on paper have absolutely nothing for evictions. And the Democrats, on the other hand, have the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act has a HEROES Fund and a very comprehensive protection for renters, for property owners who own their own home, and for landlords that own their own apartment building. Protections from forbearance, from foreclosure, from eviction, giving rent money. More about that in a second. But the Republicans have absolutely nothing. So as negotiations got derailed later today, guess what the Republicans said? They slammed the Democrats for not providing an eviction moratorium bill, when in fact it's the Democrats who have one and the Republicans don't. In fact, the negotiations got even more Twilight Zone-ish when the Republicans said, you know what, we should pass an emergency eviction moratorium bill right now because the situation is very dire. That's great news. The question is, why haven't the Republicans actually written something? It seems as though as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon that we're hearing mixed messages or a lot of showmanship or however you want to describe it from the Republicans. They're not helping Americans because they are saying that they want to offer something, but they don't put it to paper. Ultimately, a bill is passed in paper form. It's not passed in chatter. How serious is the situation? A new report minutes ago says that 40% of Americans face eviction this month. Currently, 30 states minutes ago have now lifted their eviction moratoriums. So the citizens of more than half of the states of this country are facing eviction or foreclosure of their homes. That statewide eviction moratoriums that had been in place for state purposes or either from federal eviction moratoriums have all been lifted in those 30-something states. Here is what CNBC, a financial news network, said of the Republicans' plan minutes ago. Guess who said this to you first? Myself, yesterday. In the Republicans' plan for a second stimulus package unveiled earlier this week, there's no mention of extending the pause on evictions in properties. Hello? So why are the Republicans doing this? In fact, by July 31st, some 25 million Americans will stop receiving $600 a week of FPUC, and they think that that will compound the eviction trouble even worse. Emily Benford, an eviction specialist and visiting professor at Wake Forest University, says the U.S. is facing the most severe housing crisis in history. This is not new. I've been reporting this for now 3 weeks. I have said that the eviction moratoriums have been lifted, and the financial cliff that America is heading to is rampant homelessness of nearly half of its population. She goes on and says countless lives will be negatively altered solely because they couldn't shoulder the extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic and the economic recession. A nationwide uniform moratorium on evictions is needed. Additionally, what I've called for. And additionally, what the Democrats have called for, and what Donald Trump and Steve Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow have all called for. But when it comes to actually a piece of paper that calls for it, only the Democrats have written one. Lawyers have said now on CNBC that our eviction intake is up to 3% more than three times more than we normally have. You're doubling up with families going to a shelter, living on the street. That's going to spread the virus. It says that more people are living on the street than ever before because of this pandemic, because the eviction moratoriums are not in place. So how serious is the situation as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon with no bill written by the Republicans to protect American homeowners or American renters? More than 40% of renter households are at risk of eviction, says financial advisory firm Stout Rises Ross in a report minutes ago. And it says, even worse, that it's going to hit certain demographics and certain ethnicities worse than others. It says that 20% of the people who are facing evictions are African Americans. It's chaos. Nothing is improving on the outside, but the leasing office is going to go moving forward. So what's going on? It's really quite peculiar. And what's peculiar with the situation is that there's a lot of talk and no show, and it's as though that congressmen don't think that Americans are up to date on what's happening. Americans that are sitting here and watching this video and my videos of the last 2 weeks understand that the Democrats have proposed an eviction moratorium, and so we anxiously awaited for Monday to see what the Republicans would propose. We got incredible great news on Sunday from Larry Kudlow and Steve Mnuchin that said, yes, we are debuting in 24 hours from now an eviction moratorium bill in the Republican second stimulus package. So we sat back and we waited for Monday morning, and then we waited for Monday afternoon, and we still didn't see anything. So Monday evening came the Republican second stimulus package, and you literally had to take a double take. I took a double take. I looked at it and I said, wait, where's that eviction moratorium bill I was promised 24 hours ago? Where is it in there? It wasn't in there. But what made the mixed message even more peculiar was that 24 hours later, the president said he's doing more for it than the Democrats, when he's actually done nothing. He's done zip. And then today, this afternoon, the charming guy from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, said that he is urging the Democrats to stop game playing and to pass an emergency eviction moratorium bill. Interesting, because Mitch McConnell just 2 days ago debuted his bill. He doesn't have it in there. Yesterday, he says he doesn't want anything to be passed until he gets his token corporate payoff provision, which is liability insurance to landlords, and said he wasn't going to piecemeal anything. Today, he wants to piecemeal something with a bill he doesn't have. It's just a little bit peculiar. Now, on the other side, the Democrats, when offered the opportunity to do an emergency bill to protect 40% of Americans being faced from eviction or losing their homes, said the following: no. They said we aren't piecemealing things because the situation is emergencies across the board. Ultimately, you have to decide what side you think is working worse for you in this environment, and if either is working anything for you. Democrats certainly have the ability to agree to just one bill that would provide eviction protection literally by the minute. How would that work? I've detailed that before. Basically, if the Democrats and the Republicans agree to minutes this afternoon at 5 o'clock this evening that they're going to pass an eviction moratorium bill, and the president signs it, everyone gets it passed by two houses of Congress, which is not going to happen in a few minutes, but if they did an emergency bill, at the minute the president signs it, it would stop 20, 30, or 40 million eviction cases that are currently in courts across the country that minute. That's how effective an eviction moratorium would work. Because once the bill is passed into law, it says the federal government forbids an eviction during this pandemic. That is why an eviction moratorium is so important. It's different than the grant money for tenants. That I could fully understand takes a couple more weeks of negotiation or a couple more days of negotiation. How much money are you going to do it? Who's going to disperse the money? How do you qualify? Who would qualify? What is the income levels? I can understand that takes a lot of negotiations. But protecting people from being evicted because they can't pay their bills, protecting homeowners and property owners from foreclosure because they can't pay their mortgage, you can do that literally in a 2-paragraph bill signed today. So what is this hot mess going on with Congress? Why can't they get something so simplistic and so effective done immediately right now? Nancy Pelosi's excuse is that she's not in town. She's in Atlanta for the wonderful, wonderful ceremony for Representative Lewis. But, you're back in town this evening, so why can't you get it done this evening? There are planes, Is she coming by horse and buggy and she can't negotiate for 5 days? These things can get done now. Ultimately, what is really, really troubling is that America is the only major country worldwide that does not have an eviction moratorium in place for its citizens because of this pandemic. If you look at major countries across Europe that are on equal level or lesser level of the United States, they have already had these laws on the books for months, protecting their citizens, their tenants, their property owners from evictions. But in America, the land of the free, it's also the land of evicting people. What's going on? Ultimately, Steve Mnuchin claims that a second stimulus package will be approved by tomorrow. At this point, with not understanding what's really in his bill, being untruthful to the American people as to what he's going to put in his bill, with a president leading the charge as to what should be in a second stimulus package, but spending most of his days talking about changing the election date, changing mail-in ballots, and talking about really quite troubling things like low-income housing coming into small suburbia, it doesn't appear that a lot of people have the focus of you, the American citizens, as their priority. And with that, the situation could become very grim very soon. But for now, let's maintain hope, because the passing of an eviction moratorium, if it was done, would literally overnight solve tens of millions of people's problems instantly. If you have questions in today's video, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for joining us for Afternoons with LALATE. We have 4 videos every afternoon on Afternoons with LALATE. Coming up later this evening is Evenings with LALATE. 2 great videos, one in which we answer your questions on second stimulus and EIDL, which last night was the most watched EIDL video of this channel ever. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay motivated, stay positive, stay focused, and stay LA for more.